I had a conversation yesterday with a guy about dissociation. I can't remember exactly what I was saying, but it was something along the lines of, when I go to a yoga class, I don't tend to tell the teacher I'm a teacher, partly because I'm there just as a student, but also because I'm too busy trying to stay under the radar and not dissociate to worry about what the teacher thinks. And he just laughed and said, I can't believe one of your main goals of a yoga class is to not dissociate. And it struck me that that is true. That is one of my main goals of yoga class, and that maybe I should do a post about dissociation because I think it's more common than people realise. I think it's quite misunderstood. So I thought I'd do a little post about it. So dissociation, what is it? You have a body here, and you have a mind or a brain here. And then you have something called consciousness or awareness, which is the sense of being aware that you're here now, present in your body, that you're here now, pretty much. It's not a load of nonsense. It shows up on brain scans. There's certain brain regions that are engaging when you are present and consciously aware, and there's certain brain waves that are operating. Dissociation is when there's a disconnect between what's going on here now and your consciousness of what's going on here now. So classic examples that everybody would know about are daydreaming. When you daydream, you're physically here now, but your mind and your consciousness and your awareness is over there. So you may not hear what's being said to you, or someone speaking to you may snap you out of it. You were dissociated. Another example that everybody's probably aware of, if you drive, is you drive from A to B, you get to B, you realise you've got no idea how you got there. You basically went on autopilot the whole time and you were dissociated that whole time. It's another example of dissociation. So those are kind of the everyday ones. And then you've got the more extreme ones, which is things like dissociative identity disorder, which would be better known by most people as split personality or multiple personality syndrome, where you're quite literally disconnecting constantly between different parts of yourself. I can't remember the names of all of them. Derealization, where you have a sense that what's going on around you isn't real, or even that you're not real, that it's kind of a dream state. Or some people can have a sense that they're looking in on something, that they're watching a story unfold as opposed to it being something that happened to them. And I've had that one, and it's super weird, but I've had it. And then obviously between those two kind of extremes, you get a whole raft of stuff in the middle. Dissociation is very individual. It's going to feel different to every individual, and it's going to have a pattern that's different in every individual. Now, the more extreme end of dissociation is very linked to trauma, especially childhood trauma, and it makes complete sense to me. I'm going to do a trigger warning. I'm going to talk about sexual abuse. If you are a child who is sexually abused and you can't fight, you can't get away from it, you can't escape it, it's unbearable, it's completely intolerable. So the only thing you can do is somehow detach yourself from what's going on. So you dissociate. It's a survival mechanism. It's a way of your body and your mind and your system coping or finding a way to get you through the trauma. So it's very common with childhood sexual abuse, for example, for people to report a sense of being outside their body, looking down on it, or of them being completely numb, or of it not being real, it being like a dream. It makes complete sense to me that that is what your body would do. Now, with repeated traumas, with an extreme trauma, it doesn't even need to be extreme, that your system can learn that that's how you react to stressful situations. So you can become an adult and your system dissociates constantly, or you dissociate constantly in response to any stressor. You can dissociate in response to things that remind you of the trauma. People can often dissociate into memories of the trauma, so they're living in the memory of the trauma, a flashback, and they can't get themselves back out of it. Or people can have emotional outbursts, angry outbursts that they don't remember. They've been triggered by something. Or ultimately, you can just become triggered by everyday life. So people dissociate all the time. It can be very debilitating, because if you're losing minutes or hours or sometimes even days and weeks to a dissociation, that's very debilitating. You can also get dissociation from body parts, which I experience. I often can't feel my left leg. I don't know why. It doesn't really matter why, to be honest. I just know that I can't really feel it. Or sometimes I get a sense that it's bigger than it is, or it's smaller than it is. Dissociation from body parts is the opposite almost of phantom limb. So phantom limb is where you can feel a body part that's no longer there. Dissociation from it is where you get an altered sense of a body part that is there. And again, if we go back to the childhood sexual abuse thing, this makes complete sense to me. I would completely understand why you would dissociate and disconnect any feeling from anything from the waist down. That makes complete sense to me. It's another way of getting through that hideous situation, but that means that that numbness can stay. It's not a neurological thing. It's not that the nerves aren't working. It's that you've just disconnected somehow from that body part. So what do we do about dissociation? Well, firstly, obviously therapy to help you deal with the trauma and unpick all the emotions that go with that. Then the next step, or to go alongside it, is the things I talk about all the time. Yoga, meditation, mindfulness. If you think that the difficulty, the issue going on is that you're disconnecting from the present moment, you need to do stuff that brings you back to the present moment. That's what we need to be training and learning and experiencing things to just bring us back. So we train the system to work a different way. Now, unfortunately for me, yoga, which is the thing that I need to do to train myself to operate a different way, often triggers me, and I dissociate in a yoga class, which is why I was having this conversation. There's something about yoga, especially forest yoga, if you know it. It's a style that's very focused on emotional healing, but it also includes a whole chunk at the beginning, usually on abs, which is using the deep core muscles, the TVA, which for me is the muscle that is very pinned down by scar tissue, that doesn't work effectively because of C-sections. Because it won't work properly, it affects my breathing, which is very emotional in itself. So there's something about forest yoga that emotionally triggers me, and then I dissociate. So I can spend a lot of the class in a forest class trying to not dissociate in the first place and then try and bring myself back. And that's part of why I go. Because for me, it's not about avoiding the things that trigger me. That doesn't really get me anywhere. I need to train my system to not do it, to learn a different way of operating. Yeah, I'm trying to think how to describe dissociation about me to you. So I think it can help. I don't feel like I lose touch with reality. I don't feel like I'm in a dreamlike state. How do I describe it? I'm going to sound really weird here. But if I think of myself as kind of like this, and then everything at the front bit of me is the bit that's interacting with the world, when I dissociate, it's like I take 5 steps backwards, put up a big glass sheet, and then I stand behind that glass sheet, and that's how I interact with the world. So I'm there, I can hear you, I'm present-ish, but actually I'm viewing the whole thing as behind this wall, and I feel very numb, not really with it, a bit of a space cadet. I find it quite hard to interact with people, the resting bitch face, whoosh, straight up. And I'm just viewing everything like behind a sheet of glass, which is how I've had scenarios where I don't feel like I'm in it, I'm watching it all the time. And that's what happens to me in yoga classes. And so that's why I go. No, I'm not avoiding it. I'm keeping on going because I'm trying to train my system to operate a different way. Anything that stops me drifting off there and coming back to here is the stuff I need to do. So that's dissociation, what it is, what it looks like, why you get it. Any questions, as always, please just ping me a message.